for the nation. I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Thank you very much. Sometimes I want to call you Congressman. Sometimes I want to call you General. But always we want to say that you really know the Mississippi. You've served there in the National Guard, providing the protection to the people, and to have a very good sense of what's necessary in that part of Illinois and beyond. As you were talking about the issues of moving goods and services up and down the great Mississippi River system, Ohio, Missouri, and the other rivers, there's about $1.4 trillion, $1.4 trillion of goods that move down that river into the other ports across America and shipped out across the entire world. 30 million jobs. You were talking about that. You also raised a point that is very, very important, and that is it's not just the ongoing jobs of the tugboats and the barges, the granaries, and all of that, but it's also the job of building the infrastructure itself. The men and women that are going to get out there and put together the new docks, the new levee systems. All of those things require manpower, and we know that there's an enormous benefit. Every dollar that's invested in infrastructure returns well over $3 back into the economy immediately, to say nothing of the long-term benefit that comes of having that new lock system in place, more efficient, longer locks. So as you said, more of those barges in just one tow line can work their way through the lock and not have to be broken up into smaller tow lines. So a lot of issues in this piece of legislation. It's going to be an extremely important moment in moving the economy forward. And this is the first time in 6 years. It's been 6 years since the Congress and the Senate got together to do a water resource development, reform and development program. Why? Well, I guess we just couldn't quite figure it out. But we have to do it this time. There's a need for very, very serious reform in this system. We know that many of the projects that are undertaken, that the Corps of Engineers are working on, are forever trying to get in line and get in place. We know that many projects simply are derelict. They never should be built. And so the bill removes $12 billion of derelict projects that should never be built and replaces them with new projects that are critically important. Some of those are the locks along the Mississippi and the Ohio system and some of the other dams that are out there. For me in California, we know that these projects are critically important. The city of Sacramento, Mr. Enyart, is one of the most flood risk cities. In fact, it's #2 in flood risk, probably #1 now that New Orleans has had an opportunity to have its flood walls rebuilt following the devastation of Katrina. But now it's Sacramento, a huge population in a very, very risky area, a population that I represent part of and share with Congresswoman Matsui, the city of Sacramento. A little different than New Orleans. When Katrina came through, it was flood, to be sure, and terribly damaging. Many, many lives were lost, but the water was warm. In Sacramento, if the levees were to break on the American or the Sacramento River system and flood that system, we're talking about very, very cold water, water that people would not survive in for more than a few minutes because of the temperature and hypothermia. And so we really need to build those levees. And as I go into this task of being on the conference committee, where I will serve as one of the representatives of the House of Representatives, I will be looking at those kinds of projects that are really human life, the safety of my constituents and the safety of constituents all around this nation, where these levees need to be built to a high standard. Many of them need to be prepared. In my district, the Delta of California, many of the levees are over 100 years old and were never built to standards that would be applicable today. And so we have work to do. We have levees to build. We have ports to build. We have channels to dredge. We have jobs that will be created when we pass this bill and adequately fund it. One other thing that's possible here is not only will we create jobs directly in building the ports, dredging the rivers and channels, building the levees and repairing them. Those are direct jobs. Not only will we do that, we'll also have the long-term foundation, the investment necessary for future economic growth. We will also, if we do one more thing, and I hope to get this into the legislation, and that is make sure that there is a strong Buy America provision. This is going to be American taxpayer money that's going to be used for the steel in the locks, for the cement, for the pilings in the piers, and probably the dredges that will be used for the channel. This is all American taxpayer money that will be used to buy and to maintain that equipment. If it's American taxpayer money, then by golly, you ought to be buying American goods. So buy America. Use our taxpayer money to build the rest of the manufacturing sector of America. Build our steel industry by buying America steel for the locks and for the piers and for the cement and for the other work that's to be done. Make it in America. Very simple. Use American taxpayer money to make it in America and to buy American goods. And so I'm going to be working very diligently on that conference committee to make sure that this Buy America provision is strongly embedded in the legislation. And I know that if we are able to do that, we'll not only improve our levees, dredge the channels, build the ports, but we will also have the opportunity to make American jobs in the manufacturing sector. Mr. Enyart, you may have some thoughts about this or additional thoughts that you'd like to bring to our attention. If so, please.